Beautiful Jellyfish, it's Tracy. Today I'm going to be doing another mock deck tech, as I call it, and basically what these are is, these are decks that I make that I don't personally have. I haven't built these decks, I just build them for the purpose of making a video on them because deck techs are some of like the most viewed videos on my channel and they're a ton of fun. Also, this is like a creative outlet for me building decks. It's like, I get to tap really into my creative side because I'm very, very different with my deck techs. If you're looking for a cookie cutter deck, check out other people, check out MTG Top 8, which I always have listed in the description box of my videos. I am someone who does very unusual, very different things with my deck building. I look at deck building very differently from other people. A lot of people think it's really weird. A lot of people think it's really cool. Again, these are mock deck techs. If I were to actually play this deck, it would probably look a little bit different, but this is just, I'm making this deck for the purpose of this video, and some people may be like, hey, try this out, or whatever, this may be a good option, and yeah, absolutely, you have a great point, but the reason why I'm doing this is for, you know, that. So again, if you're looking for the very traditional deck tech, you don't find them on this channel. Let's just talk about that. Okay, basically, I stole this idea, this whole Jeskai burn midrange deck from one of my friends who ran this really sweet card that I will talk about when I get to it, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I've never heard of anyone else doing that. Like, you can find like deck lists of this online, but typically burn decks, it's mono red, it is, you know, red white, or it is, what is the color combination of red, white, and green? I can't remember what that color thing is, but that color combination, or it's like red green, you know, things like that. And so Jeskai burn is really not like something that's very popular, but again, this is more of like a sort of weird type of mid-range deck. Like, you could totally kill your opponent on turn 5, but like, if you need to, you have like stuff for the later game, which is why I think I have an issue with just straight up burn. I think that it lacks a little bit of card draw, which this deck has a little bit of, and I think it lacks a lot of like oomph and juice. So this has a balance of really interesting, unique creatures and also just really amazing spells. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay. First thing, basically, when I was looking at a couple of versions, I really actually didn't look up a couple of versions of the deck, but I was talking to one of my friends about this deck, and I'm going to start talking about the creatures first. And we're going to be talking about, there's a one of in here of Geist of St. Traft. This card is fantastic. Really, in my opinion, Geist of St. Traft doesn't really have too much of a place, I think, in other blue-white control decks. I think, you know, in my blue-white control deck, when I had that, like, it was so much board wipes and so much removal that, you know, your main win conditions were like Celestial Colony and Elspeth Sun's Champion, and it doesn't really have a lot of room for a card like Geist of St. Traft, so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to make this, because I really love Geist of St. Traft. Is a really, really good heavy hitter, hits a lot of different stuff, makes that 4/4 flying, which has got evasion, so it's really, really strong. Again, this is definitely a weird sort of mid-range card. You could totally play Geist on turn 3, but it's also a really solid thing to draw later on in the game. Making that 4/4 angel, you know, having 6 power for 3 mana is really good. And Geist has hexproof, which is fantastic, so he gets around path. And let's be real here, one of the worst things your opponent can do is like path that 4/4 angel to save themselves some bits of damage. You would be like, alright, sounds good, but you can't get rid of my Geist, so it's difficult to remove. Geist of St. Traft, amazing, amazing, amazing. Love this card. Then we have a 4 of Goblin Guide. This card's just really essential. It's very important in burn builds because it's a 1 mana 2/2 with haste. So like, you want to get this out on like turn 1. Ideally, this is a really solid turn 1 play. This is something that you want to do. Yeah, you know, your opponent gets potentially a little bit of card advantage, but the access to information I think is really important in Goblin Guide. So you can kind of know like a card that they have in their hand. You know, if they've got like a kill spell, you're like, okay, I see that coming, or something like that. Card is really good. I'm happy this was reprinted, but I realized that I'm looking at this card price now and it's still like $26, which is like unbelievable, but Goblin Guide's like really good. Alright, then I had to throw one of Mantis Rider in here. Like, I was talking to my friend about it and he was like, Geist of St. Traft or Mantis Rider? And I was like, one of both. And if you know anything about me with deck building, I love one-ofs. I absolutely love one-ofs because, you know, 4-ofs are essential and they're important, whatever, but like, I just love that random one card that just throws your opponent off. Mantis Rider's nuts, okay? This card just kind of does everything. It's really, really good. You kind of really want this card, like, not like you really want, but if you get it on turn 3, it's really solid. It's 3 mana for a 3/3 flying vigilance haste. I mean, seriously, this card is just absolutely incredible. You know, it just kind of does everything. It's got your evasion with flying, it's got haste, and it's just got vigilance, so it just blocks for days. And this card's just incredible. It's really good. Alright, 4 of Monastery Swiftspear. Another really important card, really solid turn 1 play, does have quite a bit of non-creature. I run 26 instants and sorceries in the deck, so you have a lot of instants and sorceries that you want to get off, so you have this. I do have 4 of it in here, but now that I'm kind of looking at it, I don't know if I'd play around with that and potentially make it a 3 of. Yes, it's really good, but that prowess you really want to go off. I feel like I'm running a little bit less instants and sorceries in some builds because I'm running more creatures. I'm running like 14 creatures, which is kind of a lot. But again, it's not a traditional burn build at all by any means, so. But Monastery Swiftspear is really, really good, you know, having like this and then like lightning bolting or like something like that to get your prowess in is just really, really strong, so this card's really good. I run 2 of Snapcaster Mage. This really lends itself, I think, to the mid-range sort of aspect of this deck, because Snapcaster Mage is really good, and it's really good in this deck because you get it a little bit later on down the line, and you can, like, snap Bolt again, you know, so it doesn't just, oh, Bolt is gone, and it goes to the graveyard, and it's gone forever kind of sort of thing. So yeah, Snapcaster is really good in this. I only do a 2 of because I think that, yes, it runs a lot of instants and sorceries, but, like, Snapcaster Mage is really good because it's a really good blocker or it's a really good attacker, you know, for those 2 points of damage. But it's not, like, the main point of the deck. It's not a typical blue deck where you're snapcasting counter spells or board wipes or like anything like that. You can, I mean, there are synergies with that you can absolutely do, but the deck runs little blue. I mean, it's predominantly a red deck with second white and then third blue, so it's not like a huge point of the deck, but I think 2 is a really fair number for this card. Alright, and then this is the juice, guys. Like, if you think this is juicy already, you haven't even seen it, because we have Soulfire Grandmaster. Okay, so many people forget this card exists, and this was the card that I was talking to you guys about how my one friend ran it. You could probably get away with running maybe 1 of this card if you're someone who prefers much traditional, more builds, but you want a little bit of something extra in there. Oh my gosh, this card's incredible. So he had this card in his deck, and I was like, I've never seen this before. This is so unique and so interesting. So, you know, it's a 2-mana 2/2, it's got lifelink. This card is really good. I could also see a lot of people running this card in the sideboard in this build. Instant sorceries have lifelink. So again, I have 26 instants and sorceries in the deck, which is the majority of the deck. Oh, so good. So that's awesome. So you get lifelink. But then for 4 mana, and I like how it has an alternate red or blue, you're probably going to be using the red in it because, again, the deck is predominantly red. The next time you cast an instant or sorcery from your hand, instead of putting it into the graveyard, you get it back into your hand. So, cast out Lightning Bolt, you get it back. You have to pay 4 mana for it, but again, this really lends itself to the mid-range strategy of this deck because you have a good early game, but if you don't kill them in the early game, you can go on in the late game and you're probably pretty okay. So, Soulfire Grandmaster is really, really good. Okay, now let's talk about the instants. The first thing is a 3 of Boros Charm. Boros Charm is really, really important, and why I really like it in particular in this version of the build is typically burn decks look at that burst ability and say, sweet, I do 4 damage to my opponent for 2 mana, which is amazing at instant speed. But permanents you control are indestructible this turn is really good if your opponent tries to board wipe you. So say, for example, you know, you're running quite a bit of creatures in this deck. You're running 14, and your opponent brings in, say, a board wipe or something like that to get rid of your super threatening team. You can just Boros Charm and make your team indestructible, which is really, really good. It's probably not your favorite thing to do, but I like having that option. And then target creature gains double strike until end of turn. I mean, seriously, giving your, I don't know, kind of sort of like casual Geist of Saint Traff 4/4 Angel Hexproof is an 8/8 flyer, which is really, really good. I just realized that synergy right now. That's like really fantastic. So this on synergizing this with Monastery Swiftspear is really good because it gets the prowess trigger, so it's a 2/3, and then it gets double strike, so it's a 4/6, which is really, really good. So, yeah, Boros Charm is really good. Then we have a 2 of Electrolyze. This is a card that I really like. I actually had this originally in my Grixis Control build. I think I took it out because there were just some better things that I could do, but I think in this build it's really important. It's really good against, you know, your own opponent who's playing a lot of, like, one-ons, really good against Affinity. Oh my gosh, this card, like, really is fantastic against Affinity because they have their cranial plating, and they cranial plating their Inkmoth Nexus, and it's a 9/10, it's a 9/8, it's a 9/1, and you electrolyze it, so you deal 1 damage, you kill their thing, and, you know, you can do that 1 point of damage to them, you could do both to them, you know, if they don't have creatures, and you get to draw a card. So like I was saying earlier, this, you know, versions of Burn have a really difficult time with card draw, dumping their hand too early on, which lends this card really solid to the mid-range strategy of this deck, so this deck, so I really like Electrolyze. I think it's very important in this deck. 4 of Lightning Bolts. I don't really think I need to say a lot about this card. It's one of the main features of the card. It's of this deck. I mean, it's just an absolute essential. Like, you need Lightning Bolt if you're going to be running any sort of burn strategy. Then we have 4 of Lightning Helix. I really love that there's some life gain going on in this deck. I think that's like very important. You've got like Soulfire, Grandmaster, Lightning Helix, and then I think there's some other life gain strategy that oh yeah, I've got some stuff going on the sideboard, which I'm not going to talk about, but yeah, Lightning Helix is really freaking good. You know, dealing 3 damage to something, it can be creature or player, which I love the flexibility in that, and you just gain 3 life. It's really, really good. And then I have 3 of Path to Exile. People like to play around with how many Path to Exiles they run. I think it depends on the meta. I think like I have 3. You could totally throw one in on the sideboard, or you could run 4. But I think this deck has quite a bit of removal for creatures if you need it. I mean, you really want it to be going at their face, but sometimes you need that to be, you know, going towards them. So, going towards their creatures, so I think Path is really good. Or you could just Path your own creatures. Guys, I do it all the time. I Path my creatures all the freaking time if I'm playing against a strategy where they don't really run a lot of creatures, and I need a land, and they're gonna kill them, like, whatever. I do it so many times to get a land, so Path is really, really important. To me, Path is one of those cards that, like, you need to read it in. Sometimes you just Path your own creature. Again, I do it all the time. That's it for instance. Talk about sorceries. We got a 4 of Lava Spike. Again, really important card. The deck is lighter on the sorceries just because, you know, you mostly on your turn, you'll be either playing like a creature or probably end of turn instance. But then we have Rift Bolt. Rift Bolt's really awesome. I really like this card a lot. It's got that suspend ability, or, you know, sometimes if you really need to kill your opponent, you just kind of hard cast a Rift Bolt, so that's pretty good. Card's great. You'll see it in like all burn builds. Then we have a 3 of Serum Vision, so yeah. I mean, the fact that you have your draw card and then you just scry 2 is really important. Again, I really like that in this build you can do things like that, where I feel like in a lot of burn builds, again, they just dump their hand, you don't have a lot of cards, so having something like Serum Vision is really good to, you know, re-get cards in your hand to cast them so you can kill your opponent. That's like, I think, one of my issues again with burn that I just always kind of struggle with. Okay, don't know how long we are at, because I don't want to try to make this a million years long. I want to quick talk about the mana base. I think mana bases are something that it's hard to kind of talk about because people do mana bases differently, and also it just totally depends on your build, on how many things you're running of each, because you could do more white symbols or something like that. Like I said, it's mostly red. I'm doing 20 in the deck, and one notable card that I actually do want to talk about is this manland called Needle Spires. It's not the best manland in the world, but I do think it's important to run a manland. I think, like, I'm kind of doing something, like, I'm thinking about all of these modern decks that I'm building. They need to be running at least 1 manland, because again, you got nothing going on in your hand, you have nothing else happening. Having this, I really, really, really want to run Celestial Colonnade in this build, but I think it's a little bit too high mana cost because it's 5 to activate, and you need Celestial Colonnade, so that's like 6 mana total, and I'm only running 20, which honestly, I think 21 would even be a fair number, but it just depends. Looking at the curve of the deck, I mean, mostly there's a ton of stuff at 1 mana, and then 2, and then 3, but then also keep in mind Soulfire Grandmaster, if you want to use that ability, that's like 4 mana. So yeah, you know, it's just the way that your curve works, but I do run quite a bit of basics. That's something I always say. I like basics a lot. I think that Blood Moon is a card that people are running pretty frequently, and I just think basics are really important. One thing I would also consider, and I didn't throw this in my build of it, but I think you should consider, and I don't know what these lands are called because they keep coming out with all these different types of lands, and I don't know what these are, but they're the, I'll list a picture right now. This is the blue-red one. This is called Spire Buff Canal, but they're the, this isn't a fast land, but I don't know. I think these lands are really important. They're potentially something I would consider with maybe splitting up the what's it called, the shock lands and these. The deck does also run, speaking of like specialty lands, does run 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fetch lands, which is quite a lot, but I do like that there is a little bit of life gain going on in here, so you're not doing too much damage to yourself in terms of your mana base. But I do think throwing in some of these, whatever these lands are called, again, I don't know what these are called, but throwing those in there is good. And then we have our classic fetch lands, and that's shock lands. That's really it for the mana base. And then sideboard, I've said this so many times, but sideboard is totally dependent. But a couple of cards that I think are really solid things that I would note is keep in mind that typically versions of this deck will run a card like Rest in Peace, but that's anti-synergy with something like Snapcaster Mage. And if you're someone who's probably going to take those cards out for a different matchup anyway, you're not really doing too much else with your graveyard that it probably doesn't, well, actually Soulfire Grandmaster too. So it's a couple of cards that you're running that, you know, you want to make good use of your mana base. Oh, does that actually have, how does that work, Soulfire Grandmaster, with a card like Rest in Peace? Instead of your graveyard. I think that wouldn't work with Soulfire Grandmaster or a card like Rest in Peace. So yeah, definitely do something else. One of my favorite options is Relic of Progenitus. Love this card. I think it's great. And you get to draw a card out of it too, which is awesome. So I love that. I do have a couple of counter spells. I have a couple of counter spells going on in there, but that's totally optional. Always love the card Is It Staticaster. I just love this card so much. I think it's really good against Affinity. Really good against a lot of dirt, really good against Lingering Souls. This card just says no to Lingering Souls and it's fantastic. So really good against that. Really love that. Another like favorite card of mine that I love that no one knows this card is Celestial Purge. Card's really good against Jund. Really good. I really, really enjoy Celestial Purge. I'm just a huge fan. And then I also run 3 Leyline of Sanctities, which I don't really even love this card. I honestly think that this could just not be here. I just don't like this card. I don't even know why I threw it in the sideboard. You should totally replace this with something else. I think you could throw like another Path in there and then up the counter spells or like something else in here. But yeah, those counter spells are for really things that like you can't deal with. It's a creature that's too big to be lightning bolted. And it's, you know, or cards that like you can't get rid of, like artifacts or things like that. I do think that this could use with some artifact enchantment heat, I think. I think that's something that the sideboard kind of lacks. Like I said, I'm looking at it now and I'm like, Leyline of Sanctity, I just don't really care for it. Because it's just awkward. Drawing it is late is super awkward. And you want to draw juice in this. You don't want to be drawing this card like late. But yeah, you can check out the rest of the deck. It'll be listed, of course, in the down bar. And yeah, that was it for this pretty sweet Jeskai burn. I would say it's more of a mid-range deck, I think, than anything. But yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.